Okay. So hello everyone. I'm Joseph Gum. I'm from NSF NCAR, Data Stewardship Coordinator. I generally represent two repositories at NCAR, the Research Data Archive and the Geoscience Data Exchange, soon to go away, RIP. And so while I am the public face for two specialized repositories, I also serve as a general point of contact for people that need help with their data across the institution in NCAR, and even more broadly across UCAR, although no one from UCAR really comes to talk to me. They don't know that I exist. And so while a lot of our researchers look for funding in NSF, they also look for funding elsewhere. NOAA, NASA, USGS, lots of places. And so if they want to use the NCAR repositories, I know exactly what they need to put in their data management plan so that they can get funded. At least the data management plan won't be the part that bogs them down. If they want to use something like the Arctic Data Center, I know generally what they should put in there because I know what the NSF regs are. But if they want to go further out, if they want to propose to a DAC, NASA, if they're making the proposal to NOAA, I really don't know what it is. And it took a few times of sort of going through this process where we had these postdocs, these new researchers that are putting together their first proposal and they come to us for help. I'm like, I really don't know what to tell you. I'm sorry. And so born out of that frustration, I started to really dig into the websites. If you search, or it used to be if you searched for NASA DMPs, you would get something different for different DAPs, for different areas of S&D. And the astronomers have something different from the geoscientists. If you look for NOAA, you come up with this plan that was written, I believe, in 2014 by Jeff DLB. And it hasn't been updated since, at least publicly facing. And so this contrasts with what I do in these open science hackathon initiatives where I'm out at different institutions teaching grad students, teaching postdocs, teaching staff, even PIs, where should you be going for help with your DMPs? I've been saying you should go to DMP tool since like 2017, 2018. And even today, if you go to DMP tool, you're proposing for NASA, there are only two templates there. One for heliophysics. I don't think anyone in this room is doing heliophysics, and one for a more generic template. You want to propose to NOAA, there are no templates on there. And so I'm telling these people, oh, I'm a data expert. I know what you need. You go to this website and you look it up and they get 0 hits back. That's a little embarrassing. So a little bit about DMP tool. It was not started just by the California Digital Library, but they are now, I think, the main maintainers of it. Started in 2011. It's a worldwide reach. If you look in the funders category for public plans, I think Brazil has the most with 746 plans. They have an editorial board. One of the members on the board is from India. It's not just US representation. And DMP tool is actually merged between an effort from the US and the UK. So it does have a global reach, even if predominantly the focus is in the US. DMP tool features templates that are managed by agencies and repositories. We'll get a little bit more into why, well, maybe not why, but showing that geoscience is lacking compared to other areas such as health. There are public plans as examples, and there are featured plans. So if you don't know which plan is actually good and what you should try to emulate, there are featured plans that will show you this is what you should really do. DMP tool can issue DOIs. So if we're looking for reproducible science, you can have a DOI for your DMP, which I've also learned recently is important in case someone decides to FOIA a science project because they're trying to shoot it down, and then you can say, oh, here's your program officer can say, oh, here's a DOI for this DMP for this plan. It shows we're spending the money effectively. We're not just screwing around with it. And DMP tool is also working on machine readable DMPs. And that's just a nice little picture of the front page of DMP tool. So for DMP tool, there are available templates that you can use. I have screenshots all out of my account. You can see that UCAR shows up. And when I go to the National Science Foundation as my primary funding organization, I was able to pull up the BECO-DEMO NSF Geo Oceans Biological and Chemical Oceanography template. And I think this one is maybe the best template that I've seen out of all the ones in NSF, NASA, NOAA, USGS, which is kind of easy to say because USGS and NOAA don't have any templates on there. But it's not just generic. You know anything about oceanography, there are ships involved, and sometimes you got to get on those ships. And so they actually provide guidance saying, like, what are you going to do with your cruise? Have you thought about this? Where is all the data going from this cruise? And so it's not completely generic. And then we get to not available templates on DMP tool. So if we back up a little bit, we look in the bottom left corner, which DMP template would you like to use? BECO-DEMO, create plan. We go ahead to the front, select the primary funding organization, NOAA, create plan. There are no templates on there. If you want to try it out for yourself, you can go ahead and create an account or sign in through, ORCID or SSO, and you'll see that there's nothing there. But DMP tool does a nice thing to link through funder requirements. So if they think they know what a funder might need or want for a DMP, they will link it through on a separate page, but they don't actually maintain these DMP templates themselves. I understand it's a very small team and they have technical tasks to be working on rather than these data curation administration tasks that, quite frankly, they don't get updated on. They don't know if it's the latest version or not of guidance that they should be working with. And so while I'm using NOAA as the example here, I have plenty of ammunition to go around, but we'll just work with the NOAA example for now. Do line offices have variations on this base guidance? NOAA is a big organization. It has a very funny acronym that I'm not going to say here. And so there are many line offices. If you're proposing to fisheries versus National Weather Service versus OMAO versus IUS versus whoever, they may all have different guidances, different templates that they want you to use. Maybe derived from the 2014 plan, but it has changed in a decade since. And so there are public plans that you can find on DMP tool. I think you don't even have to be logged in to find these public plans. You can just click on them and you can see what other people are doing. I've sorted by funder just to spread the love around. Looking at NASA, there are 5 plans here. And there's kind of a big jump from 2018 to 2024. And I know NASA has been working on this with TOPS, with the Year of Open Science, but all of that guidance is still largely on their website. Are they reaching out to where their, not their current PIs are, but where the future are? Are they not tracking the target, but getting ahead of the target? I would say no. Alternatively, in the life sciences, NIH has 2 templates that they have designed that they want everybody to use. And if you don't use these templates, you'll be rejected on that technicality. And so they have both of their templates in DMP tool. And it's not just the NIH that says you should use DMP tool. They actually have individual universities like Johns Hopkins that are saying it is recommended by Johns Hopkins Data Services for writing the NIH required DMS plan that you should be using the DMP tool. So it's not just locked away somewhere on an agency website, but you have institutions in the wild that are saying, yeah, we trust this. You should be doing this. And I would argue that as an effect of that, you have all of these public plans, some of them that are featured that show good examples of how to write a good DMP or DMSP in their case, data management and sharing plan. And so if you don't know what to do, you click on these links, you read them, you copy the template, or you fill in the forms using DMP tool. And so you have something that you can compare back and forth and try to figure out what makes something better. So I have a dream of a one-stop shop for data management plans. If you need help writing a DMP tool. If you need to write a software sharing plan, I've recently had to help people write a software sharing plan for NASA because they have now explicit requirements that if you are writing software, they're funding you to write software. They want to know that you're DOIing that, you're making that available to the community at large. Well, if you need to do that, DMP tool. If you want to reuse your old DMPs and you can clone any templates, any DMPs you've made before, and then just edit that for the next round of funding on your project you're currently working on, DMP tool. If you want to look at successful examples that other people have done, DMP tool. If you're looking to get your guidance out to your communities, to your PIs that are trying to figure out what they need to do, DMP tool. Could there be a federally recommended tool where OSTP says, look, NIH is there, NSF is there, NASA is there, NOAA is there, DOE, BIA, DOI. If you need to do something with a DMP, we can't tell you you have to use it because then you're not going to do it. But if we recommend this to you and everybody else is there, you should go here. DMP tool. If you want to do longitudinal surveys of machine-readable pre-registered DMPs for reproducibility studies and you want to take shots at us, you can still go to DMP tool and write a bot and scrape things and be able to say, oh yeah, we are actually doing what we said. So anyway, anything with data management plans, DMP tool. If not, you go straight to jail. Yeah, thank you. I don't even know what time it is. 9:32. So we have time for Steve right now. Come up. After Steve gives his little presentation, we will have a Q&A for 5 minutes. If there is interest in doing a longer Q&A, we can do that, and we can work on less time to put together templates. Thank you.
Okay, I magically appeared. Trying to be 2 places at once. I'm almost got it down, but not quite. Hi, my name's Steve Diggs. I'm with the University of California, Office of the President, and I am here to talk about one of the products that we support. It is not my product, but it is my colleague Becky Grady. She's actually new. Maria Praxelis is her predecessor and is now our associate director. So a little bit about the organization of where DMP tool comes from. There we go. It's the University of California, which is a 10 campus system in California. It actually is a lot more. It's 10 campuses, 3 national laboratories, 4 medical centers, and a whole host of other properties. It's a pretty big place. It's the total population of the University of California. Student, staff, faculty is 500,000. There are only 4 of us supporting these projects. So each of us have, appreciable amount of thousands of people. Our major areas within California Digital Library, which is where this is based, it's called the University of California Curation Center, UC3. And we have these basic areas: research data management, which is DMP tool is under that. Data publication and data metrics, that's me. Persistent identifiers, that is my new colleague, Adam Buttrick. And then we have digital preservation under Eric. And then we all do data software skills and training. So let's talk a little bit about DMP tool, or what is a data management and sharing plan. Is sort of the current way of talking about it. I know that Joseph went over it a little bit, but let's go a little bit more in depth. So here you see the data management life cycle. It turns out that the data management and sharing plans actually cover all of this, from the planning all the way through the preservation. I teach a class at Scripps where I use data management plans as the central teaching tool, because it helps people, especially with oceanography, going out to sea and planning on what they're recovering, and really makes them think deeply about what they're doing, what instruments they're going to have, how many gigabytes or terabytes of data they're going to have, how they're going to store that while they're working collaboratively on any publications, and how they're going to store it for preservation and incorporation with other data. So it's basically a management that talks about how you manage and secure your data throughout the life cycle. It can be a required document, as Joseph was talking about. NIH came out with a really big requirement last year, 2023, right after the Nelson memo, that spelled out how fast you need to get data in. We had a digital line out the door of people who needed to suddenly learn how to do data management and sharing plans. It's also a living document, so it gets its own persistent identifier and can be closely tied to the publications and the any other data and output that come from a particular event, experiment, or grant. The standard components of a data management and sharing plan are the data collection, that's obvious, documentation and metadata. But here's where it gets away from things that are intuitive. The ethics and legal compliance, the DMP tool actually has spaces for those, and it's kept up to date with the current requirements, and that's pretty good. Storage and backup, selection and preservation, data sharing, and of course, responsibilities and resources. We're going pretty fast because we're trying to get to the good part. If you have questions, just raise your hand or just scream out, I have a question. Data management, the DMP tool, it helps you with this. So if you go back to the last slide and you just had to make your own DMP plan, your data management plan, it would come in very non-standard and wouldn't be what our goal is, machine readable. DMP tool addresses that directly. And we have a lot of international partners that we work with to standardize this. This is not the only thing that creates data management plans, but it's the one that is probably the best known and easiest to use. So it has that walkthrough wizard. It's free to use. It is funder and field responsive with the templates, which is why we're here today. It offers a best practice guide, and it gives you really pretty good feedback, as you'll see if you've not used it before. It's also very responsive to funding requirements. I talked a little earlier about the Nelson memo that led to some NIH requirements. NSF currently has some draft things. I don't know, I'd have to talk to maybe a NOAA program manager. Cindy, are there any things coming out of NOAA that are specific about data management and sharing plans? Yeah. So, I mean, sorry? It'll come out in October. Yeah. So many of the federal agencies are following NIH. NIH was really fast. They had theirs ready to go right after the Nelson memo. But the DMP tool is evolving over time, and it because it's up to date, it makes it easier for you to follow along and comply with best practices. So when we talked earlier, or when Joseph talked earlier about writing funder templates, these templates already exist. Many of them exist broadly for funder agencies, but are not specific to discipline, which is probably why we're here today, is to make them more discipline specific and make it easier for people to do this. I always think about with research data management is you're trying to lower this fence that seems to be very difficult to hop over for many researchers, and they use that not as an excuse, I used to say that, but it's a very good reason to not do all of this upfront work. They're already oversubscribed and under-resourced. So if we can use these templates to make it super easy for you to do things, even to the point that they can almost automatically be filled out, this is good. So you can see that there's sections and questions provided in the template. This helps to speed you along through the process of forming your data management. And really, I'm just going to step through graphically of what this looks like to help familiarize yourself before we get started making these actual plans. You can see there's guidance in the DMP tool from the funder and the organization. So actual text from the funder will be embedded into these templates. So when you're making them, you'll be looking for this information to embed in there so that it's relevant and easy to use. I have made data management plans where you're looking on two screens or switching between windows, and it's a lot easier to have it in the template. You can choose your visibility, so they can be public or private within your organization, and that's usually done by domain, and that's actually pretty handy. You can also grant, I think you have to grant University of California the ability to adapt and share the materials, but you can make it public or private. Visibility is a nice thing to have. That didn't used to be there. There's a shareable landing page once your DMP is done, which is has machine readable metadata, which is quite important. And it offers links that you can give other people to your data management plan, notably your funding program officer. So organizations, not just have funder specific, but you could have organizations such as Oak Ridge National Lab or NASA, divisions within NASA and NOAA, have their own customization. And you can actually change the look of it. You can change the order of some of the questions. You can change some of the text of the guidance. You can add your own logos to customize it so that people realize they've landed on the correct page for their organization. And you have a specific URL for your template in your page. You can, these are just some general guidelines to get more specific in your template for your organization. Adding extra questions up front actually promotes the users to think about making this data management plan more specific and more effective. You can add discipline specific or domain specific guidance on how to answer general questions. You can make them public by default, but they may not be accepted by the template for a particular funder. So that's something that you'd have to negotiate. When Joseph and I were talking about putting together this session, it turns out that many of the templates were already made by the people who create DMP tool. They did it with the funding requirements. So having this group together to crowdsource a template is actually a new thing. And it'll be a very interesting exercise to see how it goes. Okay, that's it. Any questions? Matt? How long are those? Sorry.
Yeah, I guess like how long are the data management plans kept within the tool, within the system? Because at least at NOAA, we have to adhere to certain records retention policies for submissions with grants and with funding things. And so I'm curious if they're like, do you clean out all the data management tool plans at one point? Or is there something that says this is gonna stay here for 50 years? Or
It stays until DMP tool goes away. Yeah. I mean, data management plans are tiny. I mean, the storage is the main issue in indexing them and being able to find them in the database. That's probably where all the computational horsepower goes of retaining more and more records. And to date, we haven't had a problem.
Okay.
You might be asking if there's an explicit retention that states that it would be around forever. Yeah. I don't remember seeing that anywhere. But I could be wrong. Other questions?
So, is there also an option to include information? So it's data and information management. So in the Arctic, you'll have unstructured data, pictures, images, or whatever. Is there a way to also include something like that?
I know there are checks with fields, but I'm not familiar enough with the tool to say if you can put in things like images, and attach PDFs. I would imagine so, and I know that they're the next phase. One of the things that we worked on and just recently hired people to do is to enhance this machine actionable DMP tool, which can include links to external documents and information.
Yeah, I have a question about just from, I guess, your experience of when people use these like plug and play data management plans, how does that affect the follow through when they get to that step? Because they kind of just dump it in there. So I'm curious how that part works.
I'm gonna ask you a question for your question. So
Yeah.
is it more like, does the activity of making a data management plan actually have an effect on them having more effective follow through in all the phases of data management?
Yeah, I guess that's what I'm wondering is if they just sort of copy paste the data management plan from this tool and, it gets stamped by the funder, how does that impact when they're finally to that stage or when they're actually implementing the plan? Do they know what to do? Do they kind of get lost?
Two examples. One is in the class that I teach. It, like I said, it helped. This class is a maker expedition. So within Scripps where I sit, but I don't like, I'm not part of the organization. The students get funding to go to sea. They get some ship time. And so one of the things that the professors of that class wanted me to come in and do is teach about data management. And I use DMP tool, and we make a grid long before we get to the tool. We make a giant grid of all the instruments they're going to use, TOYO, CTD, whatever they have, and the expected number of stations, the resolution of those stations, how much data is going to come out. We start adding it up, and it's, it turns into real numbers, terabytes, petabytes, whatever it is. They have said every year for the 3 years I've taught that it's helped them to do a lot better planning. And they now treat it as a contract. So they follow through and say, if they're going to put the data in NCEI, they actually do it. For the NIH people, because I don't do just oceanography, the program manager actually uses the DMP tool in the location for the data to actually check compliance. And they have a much more draconian policy about follow-on funding. And so they're not only is it helps you think about things, but you realize at the end that you almost have this contract that says, and on this date, these data of this type and in this volume will be in this location. So between those two things, yeah, I don't think we've ever tracked whether or not you're doing leading practices of research data management in between the planning and the deposit, the individual publishing the data. But we can say that there's a very high degree of compliance with making a data management plan and the data ending up in a trusted repository.
Hi, so we have some good comments and questions going on in Zoom. So first, more of a comment, interested in learning how to break up sections into more entries, e.g. into the many subsections of the data products section of the NASA Helio DMP. Also interested in scraping DMPs to accelerate data archival. Can the visibility, goodness, I've talked a lot today, sorry. Can the visibility level be changed at a later date? And can a DMP be shared with specific people instead of organizations? What backups are made? And
I can only answer part of that question. So I do know that the ones that are private can be made public later. You may choose to, I am not sure about it going the other way, but maybe today we can test that and find out for ourselves.
one moral readout, if you get a DOI for your DMP, does it point to the DMP tool? Is that where it is stored and accessible? Is it stored somewhere else or at the DMP tool?
Initially, it is stored within the holdings of the DMP tool, but that can change. You can move that document.
Any other questions? So I think for the templates, I have one final question. Is it possible to change the template to add, say, a checklist or something into the template? Or is it just question and answer boxes for the whole thing?
I'm gonna be honest and say, I don't know the answer to that question.
Okay. Well, then, I guess we're done with the Q&A for now. If you'd like to go on the live demo.
Right?
Yeah, I thought you have the admin account to actually show us how to make the template.
We're having a little problem with my account stage, so, I don't know how we can go in generically into DMP tool. I think that's an exercise we can give to everybody because that's open. The production server is right there.
Okay.
And I think that might be a pretty good exercise in lieu of having access.
Okay. Do you want to do it from that computer right now or your computer or
Might be
how
good
should
for
we do
everybody to
this?
see.
Or what does the room want to do? Do you want to actually see this? Do you want to actually like build just DMP right now? Or I mean, who do we have in here? What are you interested in? What do you want to do now? Other than go to sleep?
I wanna, we have reviewed the board of the know the handbook, we have now. I want to put it in the.
Okay.
So I have a word.
That's good. I mean, I guess that would be under the ethical section right now, but there's no reason why it can't be broken out into a specific section of its own, either as like organizational guidance or something in the template.
Chance of not on this video.
Okay.
Yeah. Just give me a second.
Okay, so it sounds like maybe we'll use the NOAA template and we'll try to actually build that right now in however much time we have.
So this is like five.
Well, we don't have to save it. We just sort of populate the fields and then delete it all afterwards. Never gets saved. Burn after reading. If you just write it in the fields, but it never gets sent to the server, did it ever actually exist, really?
I see you can't log in with Orchid.
Okay, that is true.
Is that intentional?
Sorry.
Is that intentional or is that a new feature to be added later? Yeah.
And the funder is just the agency, right? You can't break it down to the program or line office. Can you do that? Potentially for the funder field. It's just agency. Okay. Ah, got it.
So I hope you all heard the question because I don't quite remember what it said. But for different line offices or branches of an organization of a funder, you can have them as different templates broken out inside of DMP tool. I was going to log in, but I don't remember what my password is. Oh, there is no Orchid login at this point. My mistake. Uh, um, So for the second question of, can you break it down to line office? Looking at this slide, after you choose the primary funding organization, and then it asks you which template you would like to use, might be a little bit of a kludge, but there we have it broken out into NSF, Geo, Oceans. So conceivably, you could do something like NOAA, GOMO, NOAA, IUS. If the regional associations have stronger feelings than just the IUS plan, you could do something like, IUS, PAC IUS. But they would all show up as DMP templates in this current configuration. If you'd like to suggest something, you can go onto their GitHub. It's publicly developed, and you can file an issue asking, can you please do this?
The question is, will the ORCID ID be added soon? And how do you add a DMP template to a DMP tool?
So for the latter, we are working on the live demo right now. From what I've found, you need to have an administrative account with the said organization. So for NCAR, our Assistant Director of Libraries, Matt Meyernick, has the administrative role. So I was trying to get admin privileges or privileges to add a DMP template, but we weren't able to figure it out before discussion. The latter ORCID, I don't know. I think probably if I had to take a wild guess that is not binding on the UC system, they really want to keep you tied to an organization. Because if you just have 1 million accounts in China, all with ORCIDs that just start spamming it and keep making DOIs, that's a good way to cause a lot of havoc. And, ORCIDs can be tied to anyone. There's no special process for it, but if you have to go through the single sign-on authentication, that prevents pollution. Maybe there's some way to integrate it all together, like giving your organization authorization to your ORCID, and then that gets picked up by DMP tool. Yes.
I think a good way to proceed if we're gonna sketch out some templates is, I don't think the intention was never to get it into actual DMP tool. That's a pretty lengthy process that involves the developers. It may be instructive to take what Matt has as an outline of a template and match it to what NOAA already offers. And that might be and see where the differences are. Because like I said, to date, if you look at the templates, they're all owned by either the product manager or the developers. And that's for a reason, because I think that the underlying structure of those templates is pretty complicated. So if you just had people submitting things and they suck them into the system, you might have these non-standard templates that don't actually produce a data management plan. So I was just reviewing my notes over that from one of the meetings we had on templates, that the funders drive, and I'll read from this, the funders drive the official template. So if you have something from NSF, NASA, NOAA, USGS, that's going to require a program manager approval for that template. And so just a user doing it, in many cases, like Carolina works for a CCHDO, they would go through their program manager even to put in a template that you would use to submit data to CCHDO. And but they are saying that the note that I have back is that they like to have community engagement, like what's happening here, to drive those templates and to have groups put those things together and fast track them through that process. But it is very much a process of dialogue and not just a sort of a submission through a portal and then you wait for approval. So DMP tool is still very much evolving. The templates, and I think that for all of the things that Joseph said earlier about how it would speed submissions along and encourage people to do data deposits, all of that is very, very true. And I think that we would all be well served by going through this, seeing what it would look like to match up what you have against what's offered. Because I was just accessing through Stage, my account, the NOAA template, and it starts to walk me through, and we could go through in a live sense and see where we need to change some things. Does that work?
If you want to log on to Zoom and just share your screen from your laptop, we could do that. Or you can hook up to the. Okay.
Great. All right. I'm gonna unshare for a second if you don't mind. So, oh, it's not sharing, but it is displaying. Yeah, well, I wasn't hired for my typing skills. Yeah. And I probably have a typo in the name. Yep. Yep. Well, it is California Digital Library. So. Library. Don't look at this. Problem is, I didn't see. And now. Report. Oh, I have to go get my phone. Sorry. All right, let's do this. All right, Joseph, you're good at resharing the screen. Maybe I can do that myself.
What we're gonna do.
Yeah. All right, we're in. All right. So you can see this is a staging environment. This is not real. This is mirrors exactly what we have in production. We have 3 servers for every product area. We have a one for development, one for stage, and then one for production that's public facing. We do give people some access to this stage environment. So if they're out of this meeting, there comes a lot of interest in doing templates. We can give people the stage accounts and they can come in and actually do things. And we can test templates. All right, let's do this. Where did we get this test demo project from? That's true. Well, let's create a new one because all this is getting swiped up. Oh, by the way, Matt, we do not keep them there. They're on stage. Those plans don't go. Yeah, so when we, yeah, all right, so. Sorry? Okay. And so you see the template comes up for Noah. This, I guess this is pretty general. It's not gonna pop out, I was having earlier. And you guys are seeing what I'm saying. Well, it just doesn't match my domain. Let's go back to the known one. Okay, I believe it's created. Let's go back and see. No live demos. There we go. Yeah. All I need is children and pets up here. Make the whole thing complete. Okay, so Matt, what do you have? Just contrasting going through what's in the existing template for Noah, which is more generic, with what you have, which is more specific. Okay. So we have a grant or project identifier here. Yeah,
Sorry to those online. I'm back. The next field is a temporal coverage, actual or planned temporal coverage of the data.
okay.
Geographic coverage, actual or planned, and that's a bounding box. Data collection method or methods describe how data will be collected or generated if it's numerical modeling.
Yeah, there's really. This is very different than what you're specifying. Because this is a very simplified field for just the most basic information.
And then data collection platform, instruments, kind of all that high level metadata. I think that's where it would fit all that in, right?
Yeah, so here is the, what I was showing earlier, that has the guidance that pops up, but it is much more generic than what you're talking about.
Right, so that's like a paragraph, right?
Yeah,
Of like,
exactly.
we're gonna do all of this stuff where we've explicitly called out each individual piece. Um. There's something specific, NOAA observing system of record,
Okay,
which indicates the name of the system. I think that's more just like a keyword. And then we have research organization registry, so include the ROR for the program office.
Okay.
So that's an identifier.
Sometimes with this version of DMP, the war number it's attached on that.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And then we have a whole section on what I was talking about before, record schedule. So we have disposition authority. This section asks about the record schedule or the data set. You have data inputs with record schedules that differ from the overarching data set, asked to provide that information later.
Yeah.
So we have records, are there records in the data set? Record series, what's overarching data sets, record schedule, number. And that goes into, I think, more of the tracking for records retention schedules. And then a point of contact for that record schedule and a disposition authority. So is it temporary, permanent type of thing?
Does anyone else have an organizational template that they'd like to make that has similar things to what Matt's talking about? Because it's a much more modern and up to date way of looking at storing this information within the DMP, as opposed to putting it in the research output that would go with any experiment. Say we had some field experiment or expedition. Because I think to date, does anyone have experience with putting this in the data management plan, even if you're not using a tool? What's that? Not in DMP tool, because people were making data management plans long before they were using DMP tool, and people are still making data management plans without DMP tool. But I'm saying that I'm very interested in the things you're asking, like the spatial area where the experiment is or the cruise is to take place, where the observations are to be made, and I've not seen those in data management plans before. Yes.
So I'm at the Kentucky Geological Survey, and one of the first steps is you have to request a project folder. And there's a list of questions that we throw at them. And one of them is we use survey 123 to create a bounding box of what is your research area. So later we can tie the research products to that area and create a map service for that.
So is this more granular than what
Oh, yeah.
DMP is typically used for?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because this also goes
And I
into,
haven't gone through all the templates for the various research organizations. NIH has a lot of templates that are very specific to what they have. DOE has a few, but not many. Certainly, Alicia would be interested to know if there are any biological ones. I haven't seen any today within DMP tools. So this is really the beginning of sort of an activity between ESIT and the creators of DMP tool and the funders to get these templates in there. And I think that we have, knowing what's not there and being able to map into this structure is going to be a much more involved process.
So the Department of Energy has templates, but they're very generic, like super generic as well. I just looked, there's 19 total, 2 biology ones, and they're both mine. We did do DMPs for a research coordination network through NSF. NSF has a little bit more prompt granularity, but it still is like describe the types of data and physical samples or collection, software, curriculum materials, other materials. And so you end up writing like pages of text. And in there, I try to put down the standards we're going to use, like the number of samples we're going to try to generate, how we're going to process them. It'd be nice if DMP tool then could link to other persistent identifiers. Like here is our collection for IGSNs. Here is the protocols.io collection where so you don't have to just put, and I think that's the machine actionable side that maybe is getting worked on, but ways to embed other persistent identifiers so that you could go from something like a data management plan and link out to some place where that level of granularity that Matt's talking about is appropriately captured in collection protocols or sample processing protocols. Because I think otherwise, to get to Matt's point, like this is going to be 10 pages long and it kind of loses its allure as a reference document. So that would be my recommendation, is like, this is how we're going to process samples, link to a protocols.io DOI. This is where our sample collections are going to be linked to an IGSN collection. Something like that would be a little bit more. So this is a reference document and not becoming this like long process.
So it sounds like a next step after this, for the next ESIP, whether virtual or in person, is to actually have a session about designing DMP, since it sounds like there are a lot that are generic, some that are more specific, and trying to come up at least with a template for people in ESIP, for all of us to use to build off of, since it's so heterogeneous right now.
Yeah, so we conducted a PI meeting, a workshop to workshop the DMP because we want this to work for them as well, because this is their plan, right? And also when we test, we look at their plans in their work, their DMPs in their work plan. Funding would be the thing that they have to think about. And so we identified the minimum DMP requirements, so that they would, it will not take a long time for them to finish this, but also they can comply to the things that we're looking for. So we have data types and products, data formats, the metadata standard, data volume, archive locations, sharing timeline, use restrictions and data processing steps, data storage and access. And then it's in a table form also, so we can easily get the data, because we have data landing pages as well that we put in our website. We also have models that we fund, which is kind of challenging. So, but for us, it's just description of the model, the source link, model inputs, model outputs, just that information. But we have required portions in the DMP and some parts that are optional. And then some checklist at the bottom, so they know that they did their work, checklist. And then on the compliance side, we also have a checklist for the program managers, which is color coded red, green, yellow. And when we give the one pager to the PI, they would see if it's all red, they absolutely have to contact us. And yellow or green, if it's green, then you're good to go. But if it's all red, they definitely have to reach out to us, because we don't know what they're planning to do with their data set. But just to share how we currently do it at the Arctic Research Program.
If I could make some suggestions for some really productive next steps, knowing that there is a highly collaborative part of this that would have to be done with the developers, is for the Marine Data Cluster to collect a few examples of, like Matt's requirement or desire to have a template that's more specific, and to start to work on those things individually to get down the procedures, to get a template in there that's driven by the community, because this is something that's largely unknown by the current team for DMP tool. It's been around long enough that some of these templates are quite old, and frankly, they're not very specific. But I would caution that if it's something that is temporary, like a program that's not going to go on, it may not be worth it to make a specific template for that and just have it hanging around. These templates are generic enough that they cover a lot of bases and they cover a lot of research cases. And so if we have, if we can vet some things from NASA, NOAA, NSF, maybe a repository that's going to be around for a while, it would be worth it to construct and put the effort into getting that template in. And so there may be, we want to quantify those steps and to get interested parties who want to put forward their requirements for a template. And we can proceed from there, and we don't need to have we don't need to necessarily embed it in an in-person meeting. This is a great place to gather requirements, But I think going forward, we can do it through Slack and through all the ESIP communication channels. Does that sound like a decent idea? You're nodding because I'm here, but behind my back, you know, but that's fine. Yeah, so we do have the collaborative notes to record. At least to collect interest in getting a template into DMP tool. That'd be a good place to start, and then to get the interested parties to meet outside of this meeting and to go forward with it. I would be very interested in working with Matt and whoever he's working with who have the Word doc and seeing what really kind of punching out what that procedure looks like to get that in. Because I do not know. There's a lot of things about DMP tool I don't know. I'm mainly a user and I'm certainly not a developer, but what the underlying structure of a template looks like. It's JSON, is it MS, is it XML, is it, you know, what exactly is it? Because it's got to be readable by a program to suck it in. I don't even know if it's embedded in a coder. I would guess that it isn't. So if let's suppose that it is actually XML, then it would be easy enough for us to construct a file that could be, you know, check for syntax and make sure that it's correct first, and then iterate on that template in its native format before it's sucked into the tweet itself.
And while the marine data cluster is happy to take this up in the short term, maybe this would be best moved to a different cluster or even spun off and form a new cluster in and of itself to, I mean.
One thing about making a new cluster is you have the overhead of actually making the cluster that would add one.
Sure, I'm just thinking there are people here that have nothing to do with marine data.
As the de facto data stewardship committee chair, I think this would fit into data integration, my data integration goals. I'd be happy if people want to form a working group off of the data stewardship, we could take it.
And that's how it's done in ESIP for the first timers.
Most productive session ever.
Yeah, they all end up being. Oh, good. No, this is where this users drive requirements always. The funders provide the constraints.
Rebecca, if you'd like to unmute.
Hey, I have a question.
Yes.
Great, you can hear me. So I'm at the Heliophysics Data Archives with NASA, and I am looking at this and seeing a lot of opportunities to accelerate archival. So could there be a virtual workshop planned for data repositories to help us learn how to add templates, how to create those templates to be more compliant with our metadata standards, as in even drafting metadata records or partial metadata records based on the template simply because, say, a domain-specific taxonomy gets incorporated in which people can choose instead of choosing a random word, like choose an option, thinking of regions or areas of the world, right, for instance. But can there be some sort of workshop as in how to get started from a data repository side on this? It can be virtual. No flights needed.
There's a little coordination, but I think that between Alicia, Carolina, and maybe me and others, we can put together a virtual workshop. A little background work wouldn't hurt. So it might take a little time, a few weeks to set up the technical requirements so that we can be efficient with everybody's time and actually step through things. One of the essential things to do in the background work would be to get the structure and the format of a template so that we would have an opportunity to bring those hot and ready to the webinar so we can see if they can just be ingested really quickly or if that's even a thing. But it sounds like an excellent idea to have a virtual meeting on how to put together templates and to stoke interest in people having specific templates that would make it easier to make these data management plans.
So
Oh, a couple weeks is really soon. My thought was to do a webinar on how to get started from scratch, like what is the format to aim for? And then at the next virtual ESIP, you could have a session, maybe a pair of sessions where those kinds of details are done. Because I will join because that's virtual.
Okay.
So in initial ideation, we were going to get Adam and Danny, who are responsible for the biological and chemical oceanography data management office, BCODEMO, the biological chemical oceanography repository, who have put their repositories template in there. We're going to have them actually give a demo of how they got their template into there. So we could ask them to do that again, maybe even as one of our cluster calls, if we could do it sooner.
Thank you. Which cluster is that?
The marine data cluster, the one putting this on right now, which has nothing to do with heliophysics.
Okay. Is that being transferred to the data stewardship cluster? Did I follow that right?
Data stewardship committee, yes, we'll try to figure out what is going to happen offline, I think. Yeah, we can co-convene.
Okay.
Do we have time to answer some questions from Zoom?
Yes.
Okay, so I'll highlight the first one. Who should I contact? One, to get an updated or new DMP template into DMP tool, and two, develop a scraping mechanism to harvest fields to accelerate data archival.
One, I'll say you can go on, you can talk to Steve Diggs, or you can go on to the GitHub repository and file an issue. Two, definitely a GitHub repository, file an issue. Maybe their documentation is just lacking right now, and then they can have someone that can put that out. Yeah.
Thank you. And then can domain-specific taxonomies be incorporated and drop-down menus in the DMP templates to accelerate metadata generation? What about checks on entries, thinking format of coordinates for coordinate bounding boxes?
GitHub issues.
Thank you.
If you have any technical features you wanted, file a GitHub issue and tell all your friends to upload it. So I'm quite happy for us to take any more questions, but we have 3 minutes left. So I'd like to thank everyone for participating. I know it's been a long meeting. Thank you for sitting through one last session. You can reach out to us in the Marine Data Cluster or to the Data Stewardship Committee. We both have channels on Slack. We will be coordinating to figure out how exactly we're going to bring this forward in the future. Thank you for your time. Have a safe trip back for those of you in person.